Wait, so we need technology to survive, but if we use it, it might kill us. And if we try to control it too tightly, we lose our freedom. That doesn't sound like a path forward.
It sounds like a philosophical trap.
Our mission today is a pretty critical one. We're trying to navigate the coming technological future.
And to do that, we're unpacking one of the most talked about books out there right now.
Mustafa Suleyman's The Coming Wave. And this isn't, some kind of theoretical futurism.
No, not at all. This is an insider writing a roadmap for immediate survival.
And the gravity of this, it all comes from the author's authority, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about a co-founder of DeepMind.
A company behind some of the biggest AI breakthroughs.
Exactly. And Inflection AI. And now he's the CEO of Microsoft AI. So this guy is at the absolute top of the pyramid. He's building this stuff.
But, and this is the crucial part, he isn't just a technologist. He grounds all this in a deep policy and ethical background.
Yeah, he studied philosophy, started the Muslim Youth Helpline, even worked in government. He's the one who set up DeepMind's whole ethics and society unit.
So you have the ultimate innovator, someone who is literally building the wave, and at the same time, he's the one sounding the loudest possible alarm.
It's a fascinating paradox.
Okay, so let's unpack this. His core thesis is that humanity is facing what he calls the great dilemma.
Right.
So we're going to explore what that dilemma actually means, why this particular wave of technology is just different on a whole new level, more dangerous.
And then there's his plan, this very controversial, often criticized 10-step containment plan.
The narrow path.
That's the one.
So where does he start? What's the foundation of this argument?
Well, he really anchors his whole warning on what he sees as this kind of iron law of history. He calls it the rule of technological proliferation.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means that once a foundational technology is invented, it's basically unstoppable. It just gets cheaper, easier to use, and it spreads, globally. And it doesn't matter what the inventor wanted it to do.
And we've seen this pattern, countless times, right?
Over and over again.
The printing press is a classic example. It was meant to spread religious texts.
And instead of decentralized power, it fueled revolutions.
Or Henry Ford's assembly line. It made the internal combustion engine so ubiquitous that it's in everything now. Our cars, our lawnmowers.
The genie never goes back in the bottle. That's his point.
And so the current wave is centered on two technologies.
Two fundamental general-purpose technologies that are just evolving faster than anything we've ever seen before. First, artificial intelligence, the engineering of intelligence.
Right.
And second, synthetic biology, or synbio, which is basically the engineering of life itself.
Yeah.
It lets us rewrite organisms, create totally new biological systems.
And this unstoppable spread leads us straight into the Great Dilemma, which is defined by, what, 3 choices?
3 unavoidable and, frankly, dreadful choices. The first risk, and this is the one Suleyman is most afraid of, is catastrophe.
Uncontained, uncontrolled proliferation.
Exactly. These powerful systems getting out there leading to existential risk.
Yeah.
Either because someone misuses them or we just lose control.
Okay, but the trade-offs are brutal, as you said. So if we decide, okay, catastrophe is too big a risk, let's just stop and try to freeze progress.
Like a global AI moratorium or something.
Yeah. Then we hit the second risk, stagnation.
Right. And people might think, well, why is stagnation so bad? Can't we just pause for a bit?
Yeah, take a decade, figure things out.
But Suleyman's argument is that we actually can't afford to. Stagnation isn't just a slow economy. He thinks it leads to societal collapse because we fail to solve the massive crises we already have.
The ones we're already failing to solve.
Precisely. Climate change, resource scarcity, demographic decline. Our current efforts aren't keeping pace. We actually need AI to model these risks, to optimize supply chains, to design new clean energy. If we stop the technology, we just accelerate those other crises.
And that completely reframes the whole problem. So, okay, we need the tech to survive, but we have to control it to prevent catastrophe.
Which leaves only one other option.
A massive global control mechanism. And that's the third risk.
Dystopia.
Right, because to eliminate all risk, to guarantee absolute safety, you'd need this unprecedented global permanent surveillance state.
To monitor every piece of advanced compute, you'd have to give up fundamental freedoms.
The cure would be worse than the disease. It would undermine democracy, turn the world into, a technocratic prison.
So that's the trap.
Wait, so we need technology to survive, but if we use it, it might kill us. And if we try to control it too tightly, we lose our freedom. That doesn't sound like a path forward.
It sounds like a philosophical trap. And that's why he says the only viable option is navigating this incredibly fine line the narrow path of sophisticated dynamic containment.
And why is this so much harder than, say, containing nuclear weapons?
Because this wave is it's qualitatively different, even from nukes, which were very centralized, very hard to master. He identifies 4 features that just amplify the danger of AI and symbio.
Okay, let's get into those 4 features. What's the first one?
First is asymmetry. These tools give immense, almost unbelievable, destructive capabilities to small actors.
Not nation states.
Not just nation-states. Individuals, corporations, terrorist groups. Think about designing a novel bioweapon or launching a crippling cyber attack that could take down a power grid.
Things that a decade ago were limited to high-security government labs.
Now a college student can get access to some of these tools. That's asymmetry.
Okay, what's number 2?
Hyper-evolution. And this is a big one. We are way beyond Moore's law now. The technology is accelerating itself.
AI improving AI.
Yes. And the numbers are just staggering. We found sources citing that the price per token for a model like GPT-4 dropped 150 times.
150 times. In how long?
Between early 2023 and mid-2024, about 18 months.
That's insane.
It is. And that speed is the critical issue. A 150x cost drop means a capability that was only in the hands of the richest labs is suddenly available to thousands of companies, maybe even rogue actors. Governance can't possibly keep up with that.
It just shortens the timeline for everything.
Fundamentally. Okay, third is omni-use.
Meaning it can be used for anything.
Like electricity or steam. They're universally applicable. You can use them to solve complex problems in medicine, but the same tech can be used to create lethal outcomes. The good and the bad are totally intertwined.
And the 4th feature?
Autonomy. These systems are operating with less and less human oversight. They learn, they adapt, they set their own goals.
And they might achieve those goals in ways we can't predict or control.
Exactly. Keeping a human in the loop is a nice idea, but the tech is rapidly making that optional.
Let's drill down on the biorisk threat for a second. That feels so immediate. You mentioned synthetic biology.
Yes.
We're talking about gene printers you can find on eBay for, what, $4,000?
And cheap DIY gene editing kits like the Odin for under $200. The barrier to entry for creating something biologically harmful is just plummeting.
And our track record for containing even normal pathogens is not great.
It's terrible. I mean, think about the 1977 Russian flu incident. An H1N1 strain reappeared, and it was almost identical to a strain from the 1950s. The strong suggestion is that it was a preserved lab sample that just leaked.
And this wasn't malicious. This was just an accident.
A non-malicious accident.
Right.
And experts estimate that single lab leak may have caused up to 700,000 deaths globally.
Wow. So if a non-malicious leak of a relatively simple physical virus caused that much damage.
Imagine trying to contain a pathogen that is purely digital.
Just code.
Just code. It can be shared instantly across borders, printed out in any lab anywhere in the world. How do you contain that?
You can't. Which leads directly to the economic side of this, the cognitive labor threat.
Sometimes called the gorilla problem.
The gorilla problem.
Yeah. Humans are physically weak compared to a gorilla, right?
Why?
But our brains, our cognitive power, let us cooperate and dominate. But what happens if AI can outperform us 100 times over in complex cognitive tasks?
Like writing code or drafting legal opinions.
Or designing microchips?
Yeah.
What is humanity's essential economic function at that point?
It feels a bit like the Luddites in the 1800s. The power loom comes along, and it doesn't just make weaving faster.
It fundamentally changed the value of human skill. One kid could do the work of 3.5 skilled weavers. Wages were cut in half.
Right, but the historical argument is always that technology creates more jobs than it destroys, just different kinds of jobs. Why is Suleyman so sure this time is different?
Because the disruption isn't about speed, it's about control. The power loom replaced physical labor. AI is replacing cognitive labor.
The very thing that gives us our edge.
Our economic leverage. If we lose control of the system by losing our essential function, he argues the societal upheaval could be catastrophic.
And this is why he talks about this pessimism aversion.
Yes, exactly. He says the techno-elite often just have this unwillingness to seriously think about dark futures. The default assumption is always that more technology will solve the problems created by technology.
And he's saying we have to get past that mental block.
We have to, if we want to enact the kind of change that's needed.
Which brings us to his solution, the narrow path. And he admits this requires a real gut-level buy-in from everyone involved.
He even says that invoking a grand we, as in we need to do this, is kind of meaningless right now, that we has to be built globally.
So what are some of the key steps? He has 10 of them.
Right. One of the main pillars is technical safety. He advocates for an Apollo program for AI safety.
A huge mission-driven effort.
Massive, treating AI safety like an engineering problem we can solve with enough resources.
But that's been criticized, right? People say AI safety is a wicked problem. What does that mean?
A wicked problem, in policy terms, is one that's constantly changing. It has no single definable solution. The Apollo program had a clear goal: land a man on the moon, done.
It was a fixed target.
AI safety is a moving target.
Yep.
It shifts every time the technology evolves. You can't solve it with one big project. It needs continuous adaptive governance.
So governance is the key. And another proposal is creating an AI audit authority and AAA. What would that do?
Its main job wouldn't be policing everyday AI. It would be fact-finding and monitoring the capability thresholds of the really advanced models.
So asking questions like,
Can the system improve itself? Is it showing signs of deception? Can it acquire its own resources? The whole point is external verification and transparency, so we can maintain some kind of oversight before these systems get too powerful to even observe.
And he also pushes for identifying strategic choke points.
Yes.
So instead of banning the tech, you control the key bottlenecks in the supply chain.
This is just a practical move. You can't stop the code from spreading, but you can control the physical hardware needed to run the most advanced code.
The most obvious one being advanced computer chips.
Exactly. Advanced semiconductor manufacturing through companies like ASML in the Netherlands. If you control the supply of the most powerful chips, you can strategically slow things down. You buy time for governance and safety to catch up.
And then he calls on governments to get much more involved, to build their own in-house tech expertise, set regulations, maybe licensing for high-risk AI development.
And push for international treaties, similar to the Montreal Protocol for the ozone layer or nuclear agreements.
Okay, but this is where the critiques get really sharp, right? I mean, the ideas sound good, but are they politically feasible?
That's the billion-dollar question. How do you get a complex 10-step global plan when you have intense geopolitical competition between the U.S. and China?
And corporate profit incentives that are all pushing to accelerate, not slow down.
That's the massive internal contradiction. I mean, the very leaders Suleyman works with at these huge tech corporations, they're often the ones who refuse to slow down.
I read one review that noted a major AI company tried to dedicate just 20% of its resources to safety R&D.
And it essentially flanged out.
Because shareholders wouldn't accept even a perceived slowdown.
And that's the core difficulty of the narrow path. The problem isn't a technical failure. It's an organizational and political failure to coordinate.
The tech is accelerating 150 times faster than regulation.
And all the economic incentives are screaming, go faster. It makes a global 10-step solution seem, well, almost impossible to get done before the wave really hits.
So let's bring this back to you, the listener. If AI is absorbing cognitive labor at this pace, what does that mean for your career? Where should you focus your skills?
The value of general cognitive labor, just writing things or coding, that's going down fast. Your role has to shift from general production to these highly specialized tasks that are still uniquely human.
Like validation, ethics, synthesis.
Exactly.
Which suggests whole new kinds of jobs, like an AI-generated content authenticator or a deepfake investigator.
For sure. Those roles would need digital forensics, sophisticated pattern recognition. AI is often wrong in these very subtle ways, so the value shifts to people who can forensically analyze content, who can spot the digital fingerprints of AI generation.
To manage the coming infocalypse he talks about, where you can't trust anything you see online.
Right. Or on the technical side, you could become an AI safety and containment implementer.
Someone who translates those high-level policy goals into actual code.
The person who performs the audits, who ensures ethical standards, are actually built into these black box systems, the bridge between policy and engineering.
And what about traditional knowledge workers, writers, analysts?
For them, the focus shifts to information design. You're no longer just producing static text. You're designing and structuring content for AI systems.
So creating specialized files or protocols so LLMs can ingest information accurately.
It's about being the architect of the data the AI uses, not just the writer of the data.
So ultimately, our value lies in what AI still struggles with: critical thinking, setting strategy, ethical judgment.
Suleyman mentions the philosophical idea of phronesis practical wisdom, the ability to apply ethical standards to messy, real-world situations. We have to be the partners, the validators, the ethical anchors for the machine.
This book really does present the defining challenge of our time, doesn't it? Achieving that balance on the narrow path between technological catastrophe and dystopian control.
Suleyman himself seems to embody that ethos he calls for, what's called pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will.
Acknowledging how incredibly hard this is, but demanding we try anyway.
Proactively demanding it.
Okay, so the book lays out this complex, multi-layered 10-step plan for global containment. But history is just littered with examples like the Luddites, where society failed to coordinate against these huge threats, especially when the financial incentives were all pointing toward acceleration.
When short-term profit was the main goal.
So here's the thought to leave you with. If we are struggling right now to get industry leaders to agree on the very first, most basic steps of containment, like just allocating a bit more money to safety, what are the genuine odds that a complex global plan involving international treaties and semiconductor choke points will actually be implemented before this wave truly crests?
That is the ultimate test, and it's happening right now.